Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. It's 10 out of Jake, man. I'm rocking with y'all like y'all rocking with me. For this video right here, I just want to pop it off and let y'all know this is not about glorifying prison violence. When you talk about making knives in the Florida Department of Corrections, it can be one of the eeriest sounds that you remember, that you go home and you can still hear. When you're sitting inside of a dorm, when you're in a cell, and you can hear the scraping of somebody making a knife, and you don't know which cell it's coming from. You can just hear the echo, and so can everyone else inside of the dorm. Everyone can hear the scraping. What's crazy, though, is when you hear it from multiple cells at one time. When you know something's about to pop off. You don't know the intentions of who is making that knife, why they're making that knife. Are they doing it to defend themselves? Are they doing it because they're getting ready to go to war? What's going to happen when these doors pop? What's going to happen when we go to rec? This video, I'm going to break down, to me, what is the deadliest knife inside of prison. Now, there's people that'll tell you, oh, ice picks are the worst because they cause internal bleeding. An ice pick being something like a sharpened up screwdriver or a fence poker that's been straightened out. Then you just got regular metal knives, big metal knives that will go through you, that won't bend, that will hit bone and break through bone. You have that too. To me, the deadliest knife inside a prison is a plexiglass knife. Why? A couple of reasons. You can get through any metal detector with this knife. If you put this thing in a boot or a crock, you shave it down so it can fit, you can get transferred from compound to compound with this knife. They're not going to know it's there. You could be on a transfer bus. Mind you, our buses aren't like other states where they got a shotgun and all that. We don't have that in our prison buses. You could be on a bus, take this out of your boot, and gut the guy in front of you, and they wouldn't be able to do shit about it. What's deadliest to me, though, about a plexiglass knife is this knife has no other purpose but to kill. And yeah, you can say the same about any knife, a metal knife, this and that. But there's something that you have to take into consideration. You can't defend yourself with a knife like this. You can't defend yourself with a plexiglass knife. Because if you stab someone's jacket, or they got a couple of, uniforms on, or they try to put books under them, this knife is going to break. It won't hold. Versus a metal knife will keep going. So the sole purpose of this is for a hit and run. Y'all heard what a crash dummy is, how crash dummies get used. You just send them, boom, they crash, they go to confinement. This is meant to stab and break. You snap it after you stab the person with this knife. That's what they would do inside a prison. And when this thing snaps, this much of the knife is left inside of you. It's stuck there. It's not like a metal knife where it just goes in and then you can pull it out. It's not like a poker where it leaves a little hole, but you hit something. This is going in, snapping, and staying inside of you. So the sole purpose of plexiglass knives inside a prison was to kill. That's all they were used for. Get them through a metal detector, get into an area where people believe that they're safe, where people believe that no one has a weapon. And that's when this thing comes out and gets used. And because it isn't really going through clothing, 9 times out of 9, you're going to get hit in the neck. And something this size, it's going to go through. Now, I used to make knives inside a prison at Appalachia. I would use the bottom bunk, which is a concrete slab, and you would just start rubbing a piece of metal or whatever you had until you found a groove. And once you made that groove in the concrete, you keep rubbing that metal in there, and it's going to form the shape of the blade. And if it was steel, I would sharpen the steel up on the toilet because steel is going to sharpen steel. So I would make and produce these knives, getting whatever material that I could, and make sure that I had a weapon so that I could defend myself. Because I was, 19 when I hit an adult prison? 160 pounds? I wasn't the biggest dude there. But to me, a knife was an equalizer. The same way if a robber has a gun and a store owner has a gun, that gun is an equalizer. They both have a fair chance. It's just a matter of who gets it off first. Now, knives at Appalachia were common, but there's some places it's not as common. They're harder to get. Plexiglass is the hottest material to get because it's only coming off the windows. When you get plexiglass, if a regular knife is going for $50, this thing's gonna go for $100 its damn self. That's how expensive and hard to get these things are. If a regular knife is $100, this thing's $150, $200. Normally, the only people that can get the material are gonna be the guys that are doing work squads or working on the buildings, and they're usually white guys. It's usually the white guys that can get all this type of shit. Not that they're really affiliated, they're just more so regular white dudes, 30, 40 years old, might have been a carpenter on the street, and the CO knows it, so he brings them out on the work squad, might throw them a couple cigarettes every other day, let them smoke, and they hang out and they build shit. But if you step to them and your money's good, you can get the material to make a knife. A lot of people won't make a knife for you for the simple fact that if I make a knife for someone and he uses it on somebody else, that person he used it on, if they're affiliated, they might come at me for supplying the knife. Now, if I just gave them a material, a chunk of metal, a chunk of plexi, there's nothing they can really do about it. But for me to actually make that knife, design it, shape it, sharpen it, pass it, and he uses it, it can fall back on me. So you really only make knives for yourself or for people that are in your circle, your brothers, people that you know you're not going to go up against. But nothing in prison is free, even if it's for your own people. They're going to pay or they're going to hook you up with something. It's going to be something that's getting traded off because that material isn't free and it takes hours to do. I forgot how long it takes to make a knife until I started making this one. But when them doors would close, we'd be in there grinding all goddamn day. Now, I used to be in the cell 2 bottom at Appalachia. So if I looked out my window, I can see the booth clearly. I could only make knives if the door was shut. And I would have to have Bimba on the door watching to make sure that they don't come in the dorm and do a count and I'm making this knife. But I would make it off of his bunk, off the bottom bunk, because it was the concrete slab. When the doors were open, I'd go 5 top up in the Rambo cell. Rambo had the bottom bunk and we sharpen it up on that bottom bunk up there. Normally, the back right corners, or depending on how the cells are set up, but it's usually the back corners, whether it's back left, back right, top, bottom tier, whichever one. The furthest away from the COs is going to be the tattoo cell, the knife making cell, the fight cell, because they can't see it. It's off camera and the bubble has no direct vision. So everything is going to be going down in those last couple of cells. And to be honest, it wasn't that uncommon for people to make weapons. It wasn't an uncommon thing. It used to happen a lot, especially in these high custody dorms. Now, don't get me wrong. It's one thing to be laying in your cell and you hear something scratching over in this direction. You hear something scratching a couple of cells down. You know people are making knives. But when you're in an open bay dorm and you got to use the floor to sharpen shit up, you can actually see them doing this. And sometimes you might be looking at your opposition. You might be looking at the gang you're about to go to war with. And you just see one of them on the ground sharpening up something big. And they're just looking over at you because they know you're watching them. They're watching you back. And they're showing you exactly what they're about to use as soon as that CO goes on the other side of the dorm and starts doing count. Because there's no supervision. There's no fucking cameras. It's about to go down. Get your shit. Let's get it. But it's like I said, plexi, you can't use that in self-defense. If you hit a jacket, it's going to snap. It's literally just a killing knife inside of the prison system. As crazy as that is to say. And I remember at one point at Appalachia, I went off in someone's cell and I was hanging out with them vibing. And what were they doing? They were making a knife. And like I said, it's not that uncommon of a thing for people to be making weapons and being strapped up. Everybody wants to be strapped up. Same way out here in the streets. Everybody wants to be able to protect themselves. So, I have my back to the wall, I'm watching the door, and we're just talking or whatever, and he's just sharpening up his knife. And his knife was no bigger than this here. It was a pretty fucking small knife, probably about that wide. And I mean, it even had a little bit of bend to it, and it was made out of metal. Like, it wasn't that thick of a knife. It really wasn't. It was probably about the same width as this. And I mean, you can bend this. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly how his was, but his was made out of metal. And I thought nothing of it. He was just sharpening it up. He had a little sheath for it and everything. And the very next day, he killed somebody with that knife. He was caught for it, charged for it, got 20 years added to his sentence. But it blew my mind just watching somebody nonchalantly sharpen up a blade. And the very next day, that same blade that I thought was weak, that I thought was small, was put inside of somebody's neck, twisted, pulled out, and that person dropped down to the floor and died. But this is prison. I told y'all the story about the GD that let me hold his knife, and his knife was named Demon. That fucking knife was probably about that much longer than this one, and maybe that much wider, and made out of straight metal. Big ass metal fucking knife. And how we actually made it, because I helped him make it, we had to take the shower door, which is a barred metal door that you swing out, and slam it on the piece of metal to bend it straight to actually shape the knife. And then he went and, shaved it up and shaped it and formed it and everything and sharpened it up. But we would have to bang the door just to bend this big, thick, heavy piece of metal. And he made a monster of a fucking knife. And that's the same knife that I took because I got into it with somebody and I went up and I got searched with it. They patted me down and everything and they couldn't find the knife on me. But it just goes to show you people are carrying huge weapons that are very easy to kill somebody with. This isn't like pocket knives. They get hit in the stomach. It doesn't go that deep. These knives will go out of your back if they're put inside of your stomach. It's very vicious. It's savage. It's intense. And it makes you want to have something to defend yourself with. Even though if you get caught with it, you're going to do a long ass time in confinement. For something like this, you'll get 60 days for the knife. You'll get 60 days for destruction of state property, for tearing up a sheet or a shirt and making a handle. You can even go CM for having one of these, in which you're going to do 6 months or you might do a year in confinement straight. Just off of having a knife. But is it worth it to you? Would you rather get caught with it or get caught without it and stabbed up? And just because you have one doesn't mean you won't get stabbed. That's just the reality of prison. But me, I always kept weapons around me. Everybody around me kept a weapon around them. It doesn't mean that we wanted to use them. We really didn't. We didn't want to have to use things like this because we know how things like this is going to end up. Someone's going to die and someone else is going to lose their life. They're never going to see freedom again. Like always with my channel, I like to show y'all the reality of the prison system. I'm not going to show y'all how I made this knife. I'm not going to show y'all how I carried the knife. I mean, it's common sense. A lot of people talk about how they make a loop on the end of the string so that you can wrap it around your wrist when you hit someone. There's so many things you can do. So many different styles of doing so. And making knives in prison is actually what got me into the show Forged in Fire when I got out. It's on the History Channel and they pretty much make weapons, make different styles of swords, axes, this, that, and the third. And I liked watching it because I used to literally just take a piece of whatever and with my bare hands, turn it into a weapon, turn it into something that could cause damage. I'm sure that something that I created had been used before. I can't say like, oh yeah, I made this one for that guy and he did this. I don't really know if any of that happened. You know what I mean? I know the things that I've made for myself, I've used, but it's a fucking reality of prison. I went in there at 18 and before I was 20 years old and got released, I knew how to make shit like this. I had been poked, I had been cut. I've been fired up in the back of my head. I've seen people get stabbed the fuck up. That's just the reality of it. That's how it goes. That's why you need to stay the fuck out of prison. Because all of this, seeing this, having to do this, having to carry this when you already have the fear of being caught for carrying it, but you have an even greater fear of dying, so you make yourself do it, it has an effect on you. It has an effect on your mind. It has an effect on you after you leave prison. You feel naked without having a knife on you. I felt so helpless when I left prison because I didn't have anything. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't feel secure. And I quickly realized, what is a knife to a gun once I got out? I can carry the biggest fucking machete, but they got guns out here and I'm a convicted felon. I can't even have one. I lost so much committing those crimes. I lost my sense of safety and security. And now, being that I'm a convicted felon out here in the street, I can't even defend my family. So think of things like that before you make a decision that will cost you not only your freedom, but the right to defend yourself and your family. It's 10 out of J. I'm rocking with y'all, y'all rocking with me. Till next time.